Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second BITAx webinar, and it's for a bit of background about who we are and what it is we're trying to do. And for those that don't know, it's an organisation, the British Irish Trading Alliance. It's non-profit, and it's very much about encouraging its members to build relationships amongst those businesses, and specifically BITAx, a chapter of BITA. Is dedicated to providing opportunities and education to young professionals in that market. We started at the beginning of the year with a series of breakfasts. We had some great guests and speakers about important topics such as mental health awareness, inclusivity and diversity in the workplace. And we were set up to do a great lineup on sustainability before our breakfast events were taken from under our feet with COVID lockdown. So we adapt, and after last 2 weeks ago, great hearing the story about a great couple of speakers about their journey starting their business. I'm excited this week to be talking and to welcome a friend of mine and a BITA member, Will Polston.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you everyone for tuning in this evening. I'm really looking forward to being here and being able to hopefully share some insights.
I think, Will, there's two things today that I'm quite excited that we get to share with our members, and the young professionals out there. One of that, I know we've been speaking ahead of this call, is to hear a bit about you, a bit about your journey, your business as an entrepreneur, and I know. I'm very familiar with that side of things, and also I think we're really well placed at the moment for what is a period of uncertainty at the moment, for people to be able to take a bit of practical sort of guidance, and specifically around your speciality and your area. For those of you that don't know Will, he's the founder of Make It Happen. He's very active in terms of in your community that you built around your business. You coaching all over the country and events all over the country, and more recently I've been very much tuned into your podcast, so I feel like overly familiar with your voice at the moment because I've been sort of binging on the interviews that we've been doing there. So well, I think probably to kick things off, it'd be really interesting to hear a bit about your journey as first of all as an entrepreneur and a business owner, maybe before heading into the more practical side of things.
Yeah, first of all, so yeah, I'd first of all like to say thank you to Peter, obviously hosting this evening, and also the rest of the BITA team. It's a phenomenal community. If you're tuning in for the first time this evening, then I highly recommend that you, after this, sort of find out more about BITA and BITAx. It truly is a fantastic organisation. I highly recommend it. So yeah, in terms of myself, so I'm a mindset strategist. I'm the founder of a company called Make It Happen, which is a coaching and training company. We work with entrepreneurs, leaders and ambitious professionals to live purposeful, inspired and energized lives. We've worked with thousands of different people from all walks of life, including celebrities and professional athletes. This year, so there's a few main focuses, one of which I'm releasing a book. We're supposed to pre-coronavirus be taking our events to 9 other locations around the UK. We currently operate in 6 locations around the UK. And it all revolves around the mission, and the mission of Make It Happen, and sort of my vision is to empower 1 billion people within my lifetime to transform excuses into results and live a life that they love. So in a lot of people, when they hear that, like, okay, well, that's quite interesting. It's not the usual sort of thing that you'd hear someone say when they're at school. That's what I really want to be when I grow up, and that really wasn't the case for me. So I kind of grew up with a belief that money equaled happiness. I was sort of the kid at school buying and selling and doing whatever I could to make a bit of money. And the reason that came about was because of something that happened in my life sort of much earlier. So I've got 2 uncles, 2 very wealthy uncles. One's a billionaire, one's a multi-millionaire. And my dad worked very hard. He worked in the city, but he hated his job. He used to come home and that he was stressed and frustrated. He used to bring that sort of tension home. And I sort of acknowledged that when I was around sort of up to 10 years old. And then one day I came home from school. My dad was at home. He'd left his job to set up a business for one of my uncles. long story short, that never actually materialized. That never actually happened for various different reasons. But my dad had already left his job, and then he ended up finding himself in a position where he was sort of depressed. He sort of had feelings of depression, what I would regard as very stereotypically depressed, sort of slept in a separate room, curtains shut, slept all day. And for me, at 10, 11 years old, well, I was a little bit older than I was 11, 12 years old, I created a realization, and my realization and my belief was very simple. There's Uncle Mark, he's a billionaire, he's really happy. There's Uncle Steve, he's a multimillionaire, he's really happy. There's Dad, when he worked in London, he's a lot happier than he is now. Now he sort of really doesn't seem very happy. So it must be obvious, money equals happiness. So like I say, I went off on this tangent to earn as much money as I could, buying and selling in school and selling sweets. And I used to buy stuff off of eBay and sell it in the local paper. And I was really, really money motivated. I then got into fashion and sort of started working in a clothes shop. That then evolved. A bit of a funny story around that, which was I always decided I wanted to own my own clothes shops. And the reason I wanted to own my own clothes shops was because the guy that owned the clothes shop that I worked for, which sold sort of high-end designer brands, Gucci, Prada, Dolce & Gabbana, Etro, etc., was a multi-millionaire himself. So I just wanted to be like him. And long story short, the industry started changing. I won't bore you with the full version, but I ended up finding myself working in investment sales. And by the time I was 18 years old, I started working in investment sales, and I stumbled across a book called The Secret, which some of you might have heard of, by a woman called Rhonda Byrne. It's about the law of attraction. And I sort of reverse engineered that and thought, well, hold on a minute. I've been doing this my whole life to achieve the stuff I want to achieve now. What would happen if I actually applied it consciously? So I applied it consciously. The more personal development I did, the more money I made, and I was sort of quite financially successful by the time I was 20 years old. Then by the time I was 22, which is when I first met you, Peter, as you know, I was running a division of a stock brokerage and sort of was growing again, doing very well financially. And we went to an event which Peter was actually at with me, with a guy called Tony Robbins, and I had what I call my lightning moment. And that moment, I literally cried my eyes out for about 15 minutes, because in that moment I realized that my belief that money equaled happiness that I'd had for the last 10 plus years wasn't what it was really about. And what it was really about was how, by people not achieving what they're truly capable of, can impact themselves, but also those that they care most about. And I made that decision in that moment that I wanted to become the world's best life coach. Just a small goal that I set myself at the age of 22, 23 years old, 7 years ago. I was 23. And then it sort of evolved from there. That isn't my goal now. My goal now is I want to empower 1 billion people to transform excuses into results to benefit themselves, their family, their friends, their community, society, humanity, and the universe. But there was a step before that, before I made that transition. So I decided I wanted to leave the city, and I had my first sort of entrepreneurial stint, which was I set up a renewable energy business, and that sort of grew very, very quickly. We went from a standing start to having 85 staff within 4 months, growing. We got to the point where we were turning over just shy of £1 million a month, which sort of, I was 25, just turning 26 at the time. I thought, yep, this is brilliant. So it was all moving in the right direction. Sort of reinvesting all the profits back into that business and growing it. And then all of a sudden government changed legislation, which some of you may know about. And then literally pretty much overnight, that whole business just died, which was tough. And it was at that point that I realized to myself, Will, you're still chasing the money. Why don't you actually go and focus on what it is that you really want to be doing, which was sort of focusing on the personal development side of things.
Well, I just wanted to ask, actually, I mean, I've knew each other throughout that period, but sort of knowing, what you know now, it seems to me that there's, obviously a lot you took from that period, that business, taking that step as an entrepreneur. How do you feel there's if you could do it again, you would? Did you learn enough from that to make, obviously it was disappointing. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, do you know, at the time, it was. I would have rather it been in a different way, that's for sure. But one of my big lessons, and I truly hand on my heart believe this, is that life happens for you, not to you. If life, why is this happening to me, or why is this happening? It's like you're in victim mode. But when you have what I call a global belief, which is an overarching belief that whatever's going on in life, it's happening for you, it's happening for your benefit. You've just got to find the blessings in that moment. And I actually have a process now that I go through with people to teach them to find the blessings in any given situation, to the point where they can actually create equilibrium and they can be at equilibrium. But Yeah, I mean, there were lessons that I certainly needed to learn. A lot of the work I do with my clients now, I utilize the lessons that I've learned so they don't have to go through those lessons necessarily themselves, and they can use those insights. And I try and learn from other people's insights. I have mentors and role models that I learn from so that I can fast track that process so I don't have to make the same mistakes.
And you touched on, I mean, is that something you've always done, mentors and reaching out to people, hearing from other people? Do you think for people that we might have, just to frame it for our audience, you know, young professionals that might be looking to take that leap, is that something they should be doing sooner rather than later?
Without a doubt. I mean, I was very fortunate. I come across my first sort of real inspiration, first real couple of mentors were my uncles, my Uncle Mark and my Uncle Steve. And I sort of looked up to them as role models, and I wanted to learn about them, and I wanted to sort of find out what I could do. And then without even realizing that I would be starting to find out information about people. So when I worked in sales, when I worked in the close shop, I wanted to learn from the best salesperson. When I worked in investment sales, I wanted to sit next to the person that got the most deals. I always immersed myself in learning, not just the actions of what people do, but also how they think. And then when I started studying neuro-linguistic programming, so there's when I did decide to finally go into the work that I do now and studied all different modalities, so I become a member of the International Coaching Federation, become an accredited master coach, become a neuro-linguistic programming master practitioner, all different modalities that sort of give me tools and skills to help people get results. But in NLP, they talk about something called modeling, which is basically learning what other people do. And that's what I've done. I immerse myself in these situations to learn from other people, to gain these insights. It's hugely beneficial. But I actually now, one of the things that I teach is something I call proximity is power. And that's to have a peer group of 3 different types of people. So you have a third of the people that you surround yourself with, which are mentors. So people that are sort of further ahead on the journey than you, people that you aspire to. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be in business. It could be in your family. Like they might have a family relationship and life that you aspire to have, or they might have a fitness, like they might have a body that you want, whatever it is. But you spend a third of your time with people that are mentors. You spend a third of your time with peers that are people that are at your level, so you can share what works and what doesn't work, but also you can use them as a bit of healthy competition, and then also have your own mentees. So one of the things that I loved, even when I was like 20 years old, 22 years old, I loved working with the juniors in the team to bring them up to speed. And that's something that I've done, and I still continue to do in various different ways. So have that peer group of a third people are mentors, a third that are sort of peers or colleagues, and then a third that are mentees, because that latter part creates a huge amount of fulfillment. And the best way to truly know if you know something is to be able to teach it. So it's a great way to reinforce what you already know as well.
Do you think you need to be a business owner to benefit from having a mentor, or?
Not at all. No, not at all. And I think that's the thing that's really, really important for anyone that's on this call. Obviously, it's not just business owners that are attending this call. We've got professionals, ambitious professionals. And I think one of the biggest, like anything can be used in a positive light or a negative light. Nothing by itself is positive or negative or good or bad. It just doesn't exist. It just is. It's how it's used. Like electricity is great if you want to use it to turn on lights, but if you're putting electricity into a bath whilst you're in it, it's not going to do you any favors. So in terms of social media, for example, so many people are comparing themselves on social media. Oh, my friend's doing this, or someone else my age is doing that, which means that I should be doing this. And so many people, when they communicate these days, particularly on social media, and this is something that we really have to become aware of, is that people are sharing their opinions, but they're often stating them as facts. So this is how this should be done, or this is what you need to be doing if you're 25 in your life, or if you're 30 in your life, or whatever it is, which of course is their opinion, but they never start it with saying, in my opinion, X, Y, Z. They just say it. And it's very easy for us to be influenced consciously or subconsciously by people. And I'll just say a little disclaimer at this point: anything that I say today is my opinion. Don't take it as gospel. Try it on. If it fits, if it resonates, great. If it don't, then disregard it. It's something you like, take that. If there's something you don't like, don't take that part. It's really important to do that. And And there's so many people that are thinking right now, oh, I should be creating a business, or I should be doing that. The timing will be right for you. If it's something that you want to be doing and you're taking those action steps, then great. If it's not something you want to be doing, you want to focus on your career, that's absolutely, or focus on your own sort of professional life, then that's absolutely okay as well. I remember when I was sort of in my early 20s, I remember thinking, no, I want to be the best within an organization because I get to learn from those people. And I did. You know, some of our old colleagues, and our good friends, or our old bosses, are people that I wanted to learn from. So I wanted to be in that environment and learn from those people. And I think that's, if you are working in an organization, if you can be focusing on growing, then you definitely don't need to be in a position to be in business. Because like I said, it could be any area. It could be your attitude, it could be relationships, it could be social life. You have people that have got great social life that you might want to go and learn from as well. You know, people that have great work-life balance. There's loads of options.
I think that particularly that piece on social media is really helpful as a reminder, because, you know, I think in lockdown at the moment, a lot of people are spending a lot more time maybe than they normally would be doing. And, you know, so it's always good to sort of sense check and act a reminder of that. But we've had a question come through, and please, you know, if you have any questions, if we sort of mentioned it before, you know, get it in the chat, and we can put them through to Will. And I suppose it's sort of taking just asking you a question about your own approach from when you were starting, taking that leap from, you know, from earning to starting a business from scratch. And, you know, probably a lot of people are talking about, the question is really about income and that payoff. I mean, was that something that, especially the second time round, a difficult decision to make?
Do you know what? It's a really good question. It's something that I procrastinated for a long time. You know, when I first decided that I had this big lightning moment, I said, I want to become the world's best life coach. I said, I'm going to become the world's best coach. I'm definitely going to do it. And I remember coming home and telling my parents, doing this big talk about, this is what I'm going to do. And I was so inspired and motivated. And I went online and I registered a company online. The next day I went and set up a bank account and I got everything there. And then I said, and then I'll do it when I'm successful, you know, when, and I'll put that if when, you know, or if then, if this happens, then I'll do it. And it was because I'd created a dilemma for myself. So I believe if you've got one option, you've got no option. If you've got two options, you've got a dilemma. If you've got three or more options, you've got choice. And so many of us, we find ourselves, all right, I'm going to be employed or I'm going to be working for myself. But it doesn't have to be like that. And in fact, I encourage people to not do that. If they are going to make that transition, is you're here and here's where you want to get to. Just being here is a start, you know. So starting up, I mean, to use a bit of a couple of buzzwords, is sort of have a side hustle, you know, do it on the side, test the water, which enables you to start that stepping stone. For me, the irony is with Make It Happen. The way I actually started Make It Happen in the end was that I was reading a book called The Hero, also by Rhonda Byrne, which is the same author as The Secret, which is the first personal development book I ever read. And I was in Cancun at the time. This is after the business had failed, and I just needed a holiday. And the renewable energy business had failed, and I read about this guy called Mastin Kipp. Mastin Kipp had a website called The Daily Love, and it talked about how he got his career going. And he used to post inspirational quotes on Twitter every day. He had like 1,000 followers. And one day, one of his quotes got retweeted by Kim Kardashian, and he went from 1,000 followers to 10,000 followers overnight. And I just started burst out crying again. Like, I sound like I'm a sort of really emotional guy. I'm not. I didn't cry at all for like 10 years, and then these two occasions are really prevalent for me. Because I was like, well, that's all you need to do. You just need to post a quote on social media. So I did when I got back from holiday. I posted a quote on social media. I don't know where my mouse mat is. It's in the other room. But the quote that I have on my mouse mat is the first quote I ever posted. I did that for a week. The second week, I was like, Will, you idiot. Some people don't go on social media in the morning. You need to post a quote in the afternoon as well. So I posted a quote in the morning, quote in the afternoon. The week after that, I set up a website. The week after that, I started blogging. 3 months later, I had a 10,000 strong social media following just because I decided to start. You know, I which was posting a quote on social media. I didn't have a big business plan. I didn't have sort of all investors on side and do all of that stuff. I started doing something, and that was the snowball that enabled that whole process to unravel. And now, yeah, I mean, we operate with, like I say, thousands of people. I've spoken around the world. I have the pleasure of liaising with a whole host of different people because of that one quote that started that process. So to come back and answer your question, it's start, do something, tilt that scale from being here or being here, create another option for yourself, which is one tiny little step, and then that next step and that next step and that next step, and gradually it will compound to move towards where you want to get to.
So we've had a question. I think it's really relevant for now, and someone's talking about getting the balance right between doing and planning, and how do you do that? And has that process changed from how you did it previously?
Yeah, so Abraham Lincoln once said, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And I'm a huge believer in that. One of the processes that I get people to do, and if I've got a marker pen in here, I'll do it. Hopefully this will work. So what my opinion is that so many people in life, what happens is they don't set any goals whatsoever. So they have no goals whatsoever. And then there's the people that have goals. And if you're an ambitious professional that's on this call, chances are you've set some sort of goal in life. But the problem a lot of people have is they set lots of short-term goals, like a year or 3 years from now. And the downside to that is that you set a short-term goal, and the worst thing that happens is you actually achieve that goal. So you get to the point of like, right, I've achieved it. Now what? I'll set another goal. And then you achieve it, and then you set another goal. And what happens is you end up sort of zigzagging through life from where you are now, and then you find yourself where you're really unfulfilled. So what I get people to do is create what I call a North Star. Now, if you think about it, for millennium, we've used the North Star as a guiding light. And to my knowledge, nobody's ever been there. You might know differently, Pete, or if someone else on the call knows differently about people who've been to the North Star, let me know. But I don't know anyone that's been there. So what we do is we create the North Star, which is the ultimate goal in life, personally, professionally, financially. What would your absolute ideal life look like? So that is the North Star. Then this is where we are now. Now, if this is where you are now and this is where you want to get to, the quickest way to get there is obviously dead straight. And then all we do is we just start reverse engineering that. So we go, right, well, what would 10 years look like? 3 year, 1 year, 90 days, 30 days, 7 days, 1 day? What's the very next task that I need to have? And then you have the North Star trajectory. And for me, it's like when you get in an aircraft, which obviously none of us are really doing at the moment, but let's say someone wants to fly from London to New York, a pilot will plot his trajectory of where he wants to fly, but he flies off course 90% of his journey. He's having to make constant adjustments for the wind, the weather, the flock of birds that are coming towards him. So they have to make these adjustments, and it's exactly the same for us. It's not, so these are almost like milestones or check marks that we want to be working towards, but we can take those stepping stones to move us to where we want to get to. So I do believe that planning is important, but it's also important to understand that it's so much better to be rather than sort of to try and be a perfectionist and have absolutely everything perfect. Just be prolific in your action taking. You can literally fail your way to success, which is subjective, so whatever success means for you, by just taking action. And there's a process to do that, which is know your outcome, know your reasons why, take action, check your results. So that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they take action, but they're not actually checking back in with their results. Am I moving closer to or further away from where I want to get when I'm taking this action? Once they check the results, and they can tweak the approach, which might be a case of optimizing it so it gets slightly better. It might be the case of doing something completely different because it's not working out, and then being held accountable along the way. If you just follow that process and you just keep going through that process, you will get to where you want to get to ultimately in some way or another. It was my birthday on Monday, Wednesday, so right? Yeah, it was my birthday on Monday, and last year I decided to write out a whole bunch of lessons of things that I learned. I said every year I'm going to add one new lesson that's the most important lesson for me in that previous year. And the most important lesson for me in the last 12 months was that you need to set your goals in stone, but your methods in sand. Stay flexible so that you can get to where you want to get to, because you're going to make plans and plans aren't going to work out. Things aren't going to go to the way you want them to be. But if you stay focused on the goal and stay flexible with how you get there, you'll get there.
I think so what someone's picked up, I think very aptly, talking a lot about feedback, someone's asked straight through, Will, do you think there's such thing as a bad decision? I think that probably...
So this is what I'm about to say actually blows people's minds, and they're gonna. Some people will be just like, I just don't get how this is possible. But I don't believe that anything is good or bad. Anything is right or wrong. I don't believe that anything is positive or negative. It's all one. but it's our perception of something, which is whether we deem it to be good or bad or not, or right or wrong. Because if you, and this is an exercise that I do with my clients, which you can do for yourself, is that if you take your life, I'm going to draw this out and then I'll share it up with the screen. If you were to plot your life, so the people that are on this call, if you were to plot your life in some sort of on some sort of graph, and you to say emotionally whether something, if you deem like a positive experience or a negative experience, and this is your life, so this is where you're up to in today's days, just from the earliest memory that you can have, your life will look something like this, right? Now, what also looks like this? I'm asking Peter because he's not muted. What else also looks like this? A heart rate, right? So if you're on a heart rate monitor, it means you're alive, if life's going up and down like this. But what's really interesting is that I can guarantee any single person on this call right now, if you were to do this, if you were to look at your lowest moments, and the lowest moments that you've had in your life, mix it up, I'll get fancy with a different color pen. If you were to look at your, that's not going to work. If you were to look at your lowest moments in life, you'll notice that the lowest moments and the highest moments are correlated. So if it wasn't for those lowest moments, then you wouldn't necessarily have the highest moments, because it's the lessons that you've learned. And that's why sort of when I come back to sort of right or wrong decisions, is that the wrong decisions that I've made are what's made me into the person that I am today, which is why I come back to that sort of core belief of life happens for you, not to you. Don't get me wrong. I think you're wise to make what I call intelligent action. Intelligent action is this. It's an action that's aligned with your North Star trajectory. It's aligned with your highest, what I call means values, which are your highest priorities. That for me is what I deem intelligent action, rather than just taking action for action's sake. There's this, particularly, we don't have it so much over here in the UK, but sort of certainly the personal development world has this big thing about take massive action, and you get these big American sort of guys like, yeah, massive action, let's take massive action, which is just doing for doing's sake. Whereas I'm more of a believer in taking intelligent action, which is action that's aligned to where you want to get to.
Well, I always find, where's a good starting point? Sometimes with people, they get into these sort of exercises, a bit later, and it can be a bit overwhelming sometimes, about write down 1,000 goals and everything, obviously taking something is better than nothing. I mean, for maybe people that, aren't writing these sort of things down and aren't going through these sort of exercises, what's the best way to get started?
So for me, I like I say, I believe that everything's based around congruence. So the reason I talk about creating a North Star and all the rest of it is because I truly believe that everything that we do in life, we have the option of being congruent or incongruent. It's binary. And if you're congruent, it means your actions and intentions are aligned. If you're incongruent, then it means it's likely you're going to fall into what I call the rift, which is stress, overwhelm, frustration, depression, anxiety, unfulfillment, all those negative emotions. But any negative emotion is just a signal to be thinking or acting differently. We talk about physical health, and our physical health, most of us will agree that if we want to get fitter and healthier, we need to eat better and move more. And when it comes to our mental health, which we all have, by the way, we all have physical health, we all have mental health, is that if we want to change that, we need to think differently and we need to act differently. So my thing that I say to people is that you want to become conscious of what you want. Because anyone ever tells me that they don't know what they want, it's an illusion, really. It's something they're saying, but they do know what they want, but it might be still quite vague. Whereas if you get clear on what it is that you want, so I say create that North Star, for me, that's always the best place to start. So I don't know if you're talking about actually a process or whether you're talking about a resource, which is a good thing to use.
Well, it's interesting because Josh has come through why you've been setting that, saying that the high-low diagram, really, really useful. But if people don't know what they want, what would help them figure out, where to start?
Okay, so I'm going to plug my podcast. because literally my podcast, if you start at episode 1, create your vision. So a little secret to everybody here, and I actually see that Daryl's on the call, and Daryl's done my Unlock Your Potential, as has Tiernan actually. He's done my Unlock Your Potential 2-day intensive workshop where you spend 20 hours with me across 2 days, and I'll be biased and say that it's pretty good. But if you go on my podcast, which is completely free, the 10 modules that I cover in that workshop, I cover on the podcast. Create your vision, identify your values, dissolve fear, so on and so forth. They're all covered. So that's a really great place to start. There are some, again, there's a whole array of different books. I'm a huge advocate for reading. I'll put I'm trying to think the best way of doing it, but I've got a book list that I can recommend for people of all different things. But books are brilliant because you have decades of wisdom. Like, yeah, you can go and get a coach, but a coach is obviously, it's an investment. It's a significant investment. If you dabble into this, a book's for the sake of a tenner, it's a couple of beers. You can get a book that could be beneficial to start you on that learning curve. I will send a link to my top 15 book recommendations, and there's about another 70 others that are broken down by category, which might be useful as well for people if they want to start exploring this in more detail.
And I think actually the timing's really good at the moment. People have maybe got a little bit more time to to invest the time in themselves to go and do those books. So I think that'd be really, really beneficial for people to have a look, because I'm sure you've read a lot there to come to that top 15, and really, really helpful and insightful for what the team what people can do.
Yeah, I will say as well, because it's something that I take for granted, but it's actually something that so many people aren't aware of, is that I don't read that many books. I might maybe read one book a month, but I listen to about a book a week, sometimes 2. And I use something called Audible, which is, I know you use it yourself, Peter, so you can actually listen to books, which is great, because the thing for most people, all right, it's not the challenge at the moment, because most of us have got more time than we've had in a long time. But one of the challenges a lot of people have is that they don't have the time. But if you're exercising, if you're commuting to work, if you're just driving around to see a family member or go and see a friend, you can utilize that time. I call it no extra time tasks, so net time, where you can basically multitask, which even us guys can handle, driving or riding a bike and listening to a book. And that's another really good way of gaining that information and gaining that insight.
Okay, that's really really helpful for people to have a look into. In terms of, at the moment, people have got a lot of time in their hands, and I think some people, they'll be looking to take positive actions and really evaluate. But for some people, and I know I'm checking in with more people than I probably normally would, extra time on their hands, that can sometimes maybe people might be feeling a bit more negatively about that at the moment. Huge amounts of uncertainty. I suppose the general approach and advice for people maybe that aren't seeing the positive, you've got to look a little bit closer to see the positive sides of what's going on at the moment, and everyone's got their own things going on. I mean, would there be a different approach that maybe someone like that would take based on how they're feeling?
Yeah, I mean, so the two things. So you're exactly right, is that one of the things that you do, and part of the process that I go through with people when they're looking to sort of get into equilibrium. So I'm actually not a huge believer in actually getting to just be positive. People that say they want to be positive all the time, it just doesn't happen. What we want to be is grateful. I don't want to sort of open up that can of worms. That's a 10-minute conversation just on that side of things. But yeah, getting to a true place of gratitude is really where we want to be. And if we're feeling negative, by being more positive, what it's doing is it's bringing the pendulum back in. This is the shortest way I can explain it. So you've got sort of being negative, being positive. If you're highly positive, then you're going to swing back. So if you're feeling negative, we want to bring you positive enough so that you're at equilibrium again, so that you're congruent, so that you're aligned, and that you're in balance, which is very cliche. But in terms of in terms of people that are maybe struggling right now, it's worth understanding that typically we're creatures of habit, and we've fallen into habits most of the time, and we have structure. I'll never forget when I used to work in London, I used to get the 5:45 train in the morning. I would stand on the exact same point of the platform. I would get on the same carriage and sit in the same seat every single day, Monday to Friday. That's what I would do. And if I got on that train, or if I got to that platform, and I could get to the platform, if someone was stood in my place, and it wasn't my place, it wasn't my platform, but if someone was stood in my place, already the day felt out of kilter. Then if I got on the train and someone was sat in my seat, then the day would feel like it's already sort of up in the air, you know, which was crazy when you think about it, because I'm on the same train at the same time going into work still, but the day, it still felt off. Whereas obviously at the moment, we're massively off. Most of us haven't been to the office for 2 months. We're having to communicate via technology we've probably never used before. A lot of us having to spend a huge amount of time on our own that we're not used to spending time on our own. Spending time with people that we wouldn't normally be spending as much time with, which could be grating on us. So the thing that I say to people is create a new structure. So like I say, so many of us, we've fallen into these structures that we have that have worked for us for so long, but create a new structure that works for you. And one of the things that I know people are really struggling with, whether they're self-employed, they work for themselves, or whether they are actually working for other people, one of the big things that people are struggling with right now is that they're basically working from a laptop or a computer from one room, and the day feels like one massive day. You know, well, it is one massive day, but there's no, oh, I'm popping into this meeting room, or I'm going to meet John at the water cooler to catch up, or I'm going to pop out for lunch. It's like we're not moving. So the thing that I suggest to people is break your day up, whether that's into 30-minute slots or 50-minute slots or hour slots. So rather than you have 1 8-hour day, I'm working on the assumption people are working 8 hours here, rather than have 1 8-hour day, break it into 16 30-minute slots or 8 1-hour slots, and break that up so that you have that time away. Something that's really useful, because it will have an impact on your productivity, as well as your happiness. Something known as the Pomodoro technique, which basically work for 25 minutes, have 5 minutes off, or work for 50 minutes, have 10 minutes off, which you can do to break your day up. So then it doesn't feel like as much of a drag. That's definitely one of the things that I would suggest. And another thing which we can send out to everybody that's on the call is to introduce a bit of sort of your own personal self-care. So there's a positive psychology intervention. It's a 3-week intervention, which I'm going to send everybody or Laura will send out the worksheet so you can work through. So you can do this. It takes 5 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You do it for 3 weeks, and it's been proven to have an impact on your own psychology in a positive way, which is basically, on the Monday, for 5 minutes, you think about things that you want to go well on the Tuesday. On the Wednesday, you think for 5 minutes about what you're grateful for, people you're grateful for, things you're grateful for. What I will say on the gratitude thing, what's really important is that look for the things that you're grateful for that you don't necessarily, that you take for granted. You know, we've all had that situation before where we've forgotten our keys, or we've gone to get in the shower and there's no hot water, or you've gone downstairs and the fridge has switched, like the fuse has gone overnight, so all the food's gone off because the fridge is turned off. So there's so many things every single day. I mean, I bet none of us woke up this morning and said, I wonder if the internet's going to work today, or I wonder if 4G is going to be working. So being grateful for those things, because I can tell you now, if the internet wasn't working today, we would have all been kicking up and been very, very aware of that. So being grateful for those things, because when we start to do that and we focus on the positive, what we're doing is we're retraining our reticular activating system, which is the part of our brain that enables us to focus, to look for the good, look for the positive, look for the things that are going well. And then the third intervention on the Friday is a random act of kindness. So a random act of kindness that you can do, and that could be anything from, doesn't have to be a monetary thing. It could call up a friend and just tell them that you're grateful for their friendship. It could be calling on a friend to check in and make sure they're okay. If you've got a friend that lives by themselves that might be having a bit of a challenge at the moment, it might be you pop down to the supermarket and you decide you're going to buy an extra lunch and give it to a homeless person on the way out. You know, there's loads of things that you could do, but you do those 3 things for 3 weeks, and it asks you to, and you score yourself at the end, and you'll notice that will have a significant impact on how you feel.
I don't think anyone would argue with that. You know, your mindset massively affects, you know, productivity, and you know, I think we've all been there before, where maybe our mindset's not in the best of places, and things aren't getting done, and maybe sometimes it feels like it's going backwards. I mean, from your experience working with your your clients and working amongst the community, how long does it take to see a change of mindset? Is that a long-term project?
In a moment, literally in a moment. You can make a decision in that moment. The word decision, the Latin origin and the etymology of the word decision means to cut away, and you can literally decide in that moment, I'm going to cut away, I'm going to start making different decisions. That is no longer a priority of mine. It's not on my radar. I'm going to be focusing on something else. So you can make that decision in that moment. Where focus goes, energy flows. So where you're directing your attention is hugely important. And if you're focusing on the things that are going to serve you, then it's going to have a dramatic impact.
So we've had a couple of questions come through as well, and one was from Joshua actually, talking about from in his situation, some similarities in professional backgrounds. He started working at 16, 17, in the investment profession without a degree. Do you ever feel that held you back in the professional environment?
By not having a degree?
I guess so.
No. I mean, the thing that's really interesting, right, is that I didn't particularly like school. I mean, I left school when I was in year 11. I did my GCSEs. I did okay. I got 6 Bs, 3 Cs. I wasn't like an absolute dropout student. I definitely wasn't an A-star student. Then I left that. Then I did do further education in the form of, I quit college on day one, and didn't go back to college. But I did continue to study. So I become a member of the Chartered Institute of Investment Securities, got my level 4 in that. So I did continue to study. Now I study 2 to 4 hours every day, because so many people, when they think of education, they think of school. But for me, education is about growing into the person that you can be. It's not about learning maths, English, geography, French, or whatever. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. So the short answer is no. I don't think it's held me back. I think, if anything, it had me succeed. And coming back to the whole mentors thing, is that one of my uncles, my multimillionaire uncle, he left school when he was 14 years old. So I always had him as a form of inspiration. It wasn't like I was surrounded by people that all had degrees, that have all done well, saying you need a degree to do well. I had that role model, if you like, of someone that had been able to be very successful, having not been to uni and not done X, Y, and Z. And I was just adamant that I was going to be a success in business. I was absolutely adamant of it, to the point where when I was 16 years old and I worked the summer before I was due to start college, running these clothes shops, I signed up to college to do business studies. And I said to my mum about a week before I was due to start college, I'm not going to bother going, because I know that I can learn. What can they teach me in college that I can't learn about running a shop, working in the shop? And she said, look, please at least go for a day. So I kept her happy. I went for the day. I quit on the day. It wasn't complete loss though, because I found a very attractive girl that I managed to get the number of, and ended up going out for a few months. I'm glad I went for the day, but yeah, that was that.
And another question that's come through as well, I think, really just, really interesting one. If you could go back now and speak to yourself when you started that first business, your advice for younger Will?
Great question. The honest advice that I would give myself, that I could give young Will, I'd say short Will, but I'm still short, is business is about solving meaningful problems. Successful businesses are about solving meaningful problems. And I didn't realize that until I was sort of probably 20, in my mid to late 20s, really, if I really think about it, and just knowing that's the true purpose of business, is to solve meaningful problems. And that's the thing that whereas I just thought for many years business was about making money, or business was about being able to have freedom, whereas actually the purpose of business is to solve meaningful problems. That's the advice that I wish I could give myself back then.
And what would you say to a young entrepreneur that's chasing money?
Ask why. So literally go ask why. Why do you want the money? And keep asking the question. So why do you want the money? I want the money so I can buy nice stuff. Why do you want to buy nice stuff? And because I want significance. Why do you want significance? Well, and then you just keep digging and digging and digging, and then you'll get closer to the real reason why you want to do what it is that you want to do. That would be that would be my advice. And again, look, I've done it, and there's so many people that I know that have done it. But I think that in my experience, there's so many successful people. And again, I say success, it's obviously subjective, but let's just talk in the business context. There's not many, if any, business owners that I've met that haven't at some point been driven by money in some way. You know, whether that was way earlier on in their career or early in their life, but they've had some level of it in some way. So just because if you are having that, that doesn't make it a bad thing. It doesn't make it a wrong thing. I would just encourage people to find out why. So for me, the reason why I wanted it at the time was because I thought that if I had money, it meant that I wouldn't have suffering. That was the reason why I wanted the money. I didn't want suffering because of what I witnessed growing up. Whereas then when I flipped it and I just had a bit of a paradigm shift, and I was like, well, if I made my business about empowering people so they didn't have to suffer, then the money becomes the byproduct of doing that work. And I'm a huge believer in that. I mean, I study universal laws. I study a lot of different things, but one of the things I study is universal laws, and there's the law of reciprocity, which basically other people might label as karma, but what you give, you get back more so. And if you can give to people in a way that impacts them, then they're going to get back you're going to get back in abundance. So yeah.
Well, I'm sure we could be speaking for hours, and I think, you know, for people that have tuned in today and those that are watching this online after, I think there's plenty of bits, you know, lessons, you know, learned from your journey, practical insight, and you know, of course, I know that you're a avid social media person. You know, you're constantly putting stuff up. How do people sort of get in that loop?
Yeah, cool. So a couple of different ways. So yeah, click me on LinkedIn, Will Polston. I'm most active in our Facebook group, which is the Make It Happen community. You can join that, it's free. It's sort of nearly 5,000 people in there. You can come and join us. On Instagram, at Will Polston. So yeah, they're kind of the main ways. And yeah, feel free to connect with me on Facebook personally as well. That's cool. And then obviously the podcast, if people want to sort of immerse themselves, I've got some great guests that I have on the show as well. So yeah, people can sort of immerse themselves in various different topics and find out a bit more.
Great. And for everyone that's tuned in today, thank you very much for your questions. And you know, we're putting most of our content out on the BITAx LinkedIn page. We'll be holding another webinar in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks time, on the 3rd of, and we'll be pushing details out from that. I'd like to thank the rest of Will, obviously, for joining us today and giving us this insight for people that have tuned in. The rest of the board and Bitter as well for their support in helping us getting this event together. So yeah, no, I think we really helped deliver what we've tried to do, which is help and support for young professionals in our networking community. And I hope to see plenty of new faces and names on the participants list. So I hope to see in some of the more content we're going to be continuing putting out.
Cool. No, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully find it beneficial.
All right. Thanks, Will.